When it comes to bridging the racial equity competency gap in the workplace, many organizations struggle to support their employees in terms of achieving racial equity. One of the things that we've noticed in the workplace is that many leaders struggle due to their lack of emotional awareness around some of the emotions that often get in the way of their decisions, as well as the self-awareness and clarity needed in order to know how to take action, and most importantly, what the right action to take is. Helping employees to get emotional clarity on where they may feel stuck or where the emotions are showing up is important, because that helps to shift your employees from a place of cultural stagnation in terms of upholding the status quo and shifting them towards the change that you would like to see in terms of racial equity and creating a more equitable workplace where every single individual can feel welcome and that they belong. So when it comes to increasing a racial equity competency and the leadership behavioral gap, the first thing is to address the varying emotions that employees might feel as they navigate this change and this transition. Some of the emotions that we have seen coming up consistently with various groups fall in the range of there might be fear, there's guilt, employees might feel a bit of helplessness because they don't feel supported enough, they don't have enough information in terms of understanding race or racial equity. There's helplessness, there's a little bit of frustration, and also loneliness as well, because sometimes employees feel like they're the only ones who are struggling with the lack of systemic knowledge in terms of what racial inequity can look like in the workplace. So how can organizations help employees shift that mindset? How do we take them from a fixed mindset and to go beyond a growth mindset so that we can enable the change that we'd like to see in the workplace? Of course, leaving behind a leadership legacy that you will be proud of. I often remind folks that on the other side of fear, helplessness, guilt, shame, all emotions which are valid human experiences, there's also courage. So how do we shift from an unpleasant emotion that often tends to render employees into inaction, meaning that productivity goes down, exclusion is felt on all levels, and of course, historically and systemically marginalized workplace groups feel like they don't belong, because as structural whiteness becomes visible, the discomfort also becomes more visible as well. So how can we create a psychologically safe container for employees to not only feel and process their emotions so that we can move towards equitable change? The first is addressing the elephant in the emotions room. Speak to your employees about what does fear look like in the workplace? What does helplessness feel like? What does not feeling supported enough or feeling psychologically safe enough feels like in the workplace? This is where leaders can model that behavior by leading by example. They can ask, they can invite, and they can also share the various unpleasant emotions that they themselves are feeling on their own racial equity competency roadmap or pathway. The second thing is, as leaders model that behavior in terms of being transparent and being authentic and sincere by sharing their own racial equity journey, also think about what is my default reaction to bridging my racial equity competency knowledge gap. And what we have noticed in our work working with many organizations, especially C-suite leaders, there tends to be a 5D response that leaders default or fall into on the journey towards bridging the racial equity knowledge gap. Leaders tend to, one, deny their level of emotional discomfort. Leaders tend to distract themselves by, prioritizing themselves with other activities, or I would say lesser priorities. Leaders also tend to diminish the emotional response or the importance of the work being done. Leaders also tend to deflect and also dismiss some of the emotions that come up. So how do we now take these valuable emotions and shift your employees from inaction? Because at the center of racial inequity is a lack of action. So in order for us to move and shift our culture forward, we need to leap into equitable action in order for us to see the change that we would like to see. So just to recap, first, identify what is that emotion that you're feeling as you move away from your fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Name the emotion. Is it fear? Is it guilt? Is it shame? Is it helplessness? Is it vulnerability? And secondly, notice, what is my immediate response or my default response? Do I tend to deny? Do I dismiss? Do I distract? Do I diminish? And do I deflect? And the last thing that I would say is, as you notice the behavior tied to that response, if you tend to be silent, if you tend to do more of the status quo, it means that you're leaving innovation, great ideas, and most importantly, you are missing out on a unique set of talent and also pool of individuals who can add so much value to your organizations. So think about your next action, ensure that it's rooted in equity, and then have the courage to take consistent action on a day-to-day until the change that you are seeking becomes your new reality.